Hello, everyone. Warm welcome to the Fossil Advertisements and Sponsorship Ban Days of Action Skillshare that we're going to be talking about offline tactics. To our help today, we have two guests, Kevin from the Gastivists Collective, as well as Teresa from Fossil Free Culture in the Netherlands. And we're going to be hearing their insights and ideas around different tactics, ways for us to make our voices heard and really hit these advertising and fossil fuel and greenwashing companies where it hurts of their brand image and the way they are seen and their social license in public. This is part of a Skillshare series that we are running to support the call to action to do a hashtag BanFossilAds. So on the 7th to 10th October, groups from around Europe will collaborate and amplify each other as we go to confront the communication strategies of the big polluters with decentralized coordinated actions in the run-up to COP26 in Glasgow this November. This is calling groups to participate by reclaiming corporate advertising spaces using creative artworks that challenge and question the legitimacy of the fossil fuel industry in our public space. You can organize protests against the fossil industry, the airlines, the car manufacturers, as well as the advertising agencies that are promoting and pumping out these messages in public spaces and to all of us. There are many campaigns that are continuing to function this way, and there are many groups that are very welcome to start and be a part of this for the first time. A lot of us are fighting the fights to remove the big polluters from sports clubs, museums, universities, art galleries, where they use their sponsorship money in order to legitimize themselves in our communities, as well as also calling for advertising bans on municipal levels, on city levels, or even international levels in the EU, as we try to make a stand and make sure that the fossil fuel industry's license to operate is questioned the same way we don't allow tobacco industry to continue promoting their severe health risks in our communities. We need to make a stand against fossil fuel advertisement. In order to do that and take on this creative advertising space, we need to be creative ourselves, and to our help to be inspired and start new ideas in order to take action. I'm very happy to start off by introducing Kevin, who's part of the Gastivists Collective, who have done amazing work in these AdHack spaces before, and share your experience and wonderful creative things people have been up to in this fight. Welcome, Kevin.
Hi, and thank you so much. Hi, everyone, and great to be here. Yeah, leading off what was just said, I think it's really interesting how we can be looking at the stories that industry is telling and countering those with our own narratives. In many ways, we are in a narrative fight here. Some of my kid just walked in the room and I'm recording a call. So sorry about that. Welcome to Family Life. Yeah, we'll just give them a sec. So I've got a little presentation pulled together. So let's jump into that, because I think some of the best ways to see this and understand some of this is to start seeing some of the examples. And let's just jump to view presentation mode. Here we go. Play slideshow. Here we are. You can say okay. Yeah, we're good. Great. So as mentioned, I'm part of the Gastivists Collective. We're a small collective, and we are focused specifically on fossil gas and pushing against sort of the natural gas narrative, which is a really fun space because we have to engage with this narrative. We're in a narrative fight right now. They're saying it's clean and a climate solution. We're saying it's methane. You're insane. This is a greenhouse gas that's underground. What are you doing? But one of the principles just to pull in, I think we need to be approaching as we approach this narrative intervention work is this idea of reframing, to sort of change the lens of the debate. So everyone can make a little frame with their fingers, and I can look around and I can see a water bottle, a plant, a ceiling. I can look at many different parts of the story we're in. And I think what we're trying to be doing actually is just sort of zooming that lens to certain parts, and they're trying to zoom the lens to other parts. They want to be talking about energy and technology and how, you know, there are renewables that they're doing, and we want to be talking about their extraction, the fossil fuels and combustion. So we need to be fighting to get that lens over there and not accepting the frame that they have, because then we're going to be fighting inside the frame that they've established. We have to be proposing other frames and then fighting within those. So there's a basic truth about framing. If you accept the other guy's frame, you lose. So we need to be recreating frames and not just kind of pushing back against their frames. An example of this, which I saw spray painted under bridge in London, was you're not stuck in traffic, you are traffic. So just think about how that single sentence changes the power dynamics in relationship. And I'm just going to give a few little examples to start thinking about how there's implicit power dynamics in all of these framings and the different ways we can be framing single things. So one story we can say is climate change, save the earth. You know, one way of framing it is save the earth. We assume, have to save the earth. We don't know from what, but we'll save it. Another way is, in activism, we love to save stuff. Greenpeace loves to save stuff, save the Arctic, save the climate, save the world, save the polar bears. But this is drawing attention to what has to be saved. Right? It's bringing the attention to the victim. And we want to be thinking about how we can be supporting the victim and empowering them. Another way to say the same story is save the humans. That kind of zooms out the frame a little bit. Suddenly humans are inside the same frame of the story and not outside of it. Another way to say the same story is the earth isn't dying, it's being killed. And those who are killing it have names and addresses. So suddenly it's not a, you know, the action has shifted from saving to killing. So it's a different relationship. It's a different active verb. And so think about how we want to be drawing attention to the grammar of our campaigns. And sort of final example of the same story is we are nature defending itself. So we are nature. We're put back in nature. We're not outside saviors coming in. And it's not an act of saving, it's defending. Defending has different connotations. It implies that, you know, protecting something to keep it as it was. And that you're implicit in it. And so just, I wanted to show that example of how we can be different ways of saying the same story with examples from our own movements. But now let's jump in a little bit to the gas, which is my area of specialties, which is on fossil gas narratives. And I'm going to show some advertisements from fossil gas companies. And, you know, this applies to almost any form of fossil fuel advertising. Gas just happens to be pretty out there. And just, we're in a battle for the story. We're trying to win over the public to believe our story. And fortunately, our story is right. So we have that on our side. But you know, what the industry says, these are some of their advertisements. When the wind doesn't blow, when the sun doesn't shine, you know, that's when you need gas. They say it's good new energy. New, I don't know what's new about it. I don't know what this girl on a bicycle has to do with fossil gas or fracking, but you know, it's green, fun, blah, blah, blah. So to always think about sort of the emotion they're trying to convey with their advertisements, because they put hundreds of thousands of euros into this ad. They want to tell a good story, you know, and they love to shift the frame to like, how can we fight urban air pollution? Good question. I don't think you're doing that, but you know, you can bring the frame there. Or what if you could begin again? You know, this idea of new beginnings, fossil gas as kind of a new, different than the other project of fossil capitalism from the past, you know, a few hundred years. And lots of technology, it's super high tech, you know, it couldn't possibly go wrong. And so some of the ways in which people are pushing back against that is this is an action done by a group called the Yes Men in New York. And they put these stickers on water fountains all over the city. And this water is likely safe. If you have concerns about contamination due to hydraulic fracturing, expose water to flame. So this kind of like one creative tactic that suddenly shifted the narrative to be about your water might catch on fire, test it. So that's a very different discourse than that around energy. And here's an action we did pushing against the Flame Conference, an annual conference in Amsterdam. So natural gas causes natural disasters. We replaced bus ads around the conference center with these. So questioning that idea of what is natural in some ways. And I'll share the link later in the chat, but There's a whole tactics manual we came up with, and thinking about how we can be shifting the frame to show how what's happening here affects people around the world, global supply chains, how we can be calling out advertisements that lie. We're the low carbon energy just over the horizon. That ad was sued because it's misleading. It's not true. And then how we can be subvertising, which I'll talk about a bit more. And also thinking about, always look at your opponent as what is their aesthetic, what is their logo, what is their narrative, and how can you reference that in ways that make it really obvious you're challenging them. They've often built a whole story or world around their around their story, and you can challenge that. And just to check on times, I can't see the time, so Carl, start waving to me when there's 5 minutes left or something. So I'm going to talk about one specific project we ran as the Gastivists Collective, which was called AdHack, where we knew we wanted to do a creative project that directly challenged the fossil gas industry narrative. And what their narrative was saying, what they wanted the debate to be is gas good or bad for the climate? And we wanted to shift the debate to the gas industry is lying. Or, ask that question, are they lying? Because think about it, once you shift the frame of the question, then that opens the debate. So if the question is, are they good or bad? It's, I don't know, man, let's discuss. If it's, are they lying? It's like, oh, I don't know. But that's the debate we want them to be engaging with. And often a lot of these actions are great because if you create a strong enough frame, they're not going to challenge you because the last thing they want to talk about is what you're talking about. So the group I mentioned before, the yes men, they're constantly doing illegal stuff and almost never have legal problems because that would just draw attention to the specific issue the company does not want to talk about. So what was AdHack? It was a project where we organized groups in 16 cities across Europe to change bus stop advertisements. You can get a little key, brandalism.ch has some fantastic resources on this. You can get a little key, you can open it up. So, and we went right for, we said, we're going to look at what their narratives are and we're going to challenge those. So natural gas is not clean, green, or renewable. And we thought, what better way to do this than children crying. Nothing says this is a lie, like children crying, but we got some windmills in the background. And then we had information about methane in the bottom. And some other posters, natural gas is a greenhouse gas. Natural gas is as bad for the climate as coal. So some of our main messages, really putting those out front, but those were the messages that were really challenging with an image that kind of grabbed attention. And here, natural gas is methane with marketing. They're calling it a fossil fuel, but it's also a greenhouse gas. They're selling a greenhouse gas as a climate solution that shifted the debate away from combustion and towards leakage, towards the leakage of methane. And then groups all over Europe did amazing stuff. Here's a group from the UK that on UN World Water Day hacked the aesthetic of the UN ad campaign, which was what does water mean to you? And they shifted that to water is a right, fracking is a crime. So shifting the narrative into the territory that they wanted to be talking about. Here in Barcelona, directly changing elements of, on the left is a Repsol ad about energy, renewable energy, and on the right is a hack of their same ad, non-renewable energy. So really look at what advertisements they're using already. Look at what words, what coding, what visuals. What are they trying to make their campaign or brand identify with, and go after that to question it or tell a different story. In France, they did an amazing campaign. Crédit Agricole, one of the French banks, has this whole campaign of like your face when. So it's like your face when you realize there's so little fees, or your face when you realize your bank is the most polluting bank investor in France. So they piece by piece hacked the ad campaign of Crédit Agricole to draw attention, shift the frame to what was really going on. Here's another ad by them, but just really, I loved how much they really took the piss out of the existing ad campaign. Here are two posters from Amsterdam from the same action. What is Shell doing? Keep drilling, baby. Just let's keep extracting at all costs. And can't stop, won't stop. That's our model. So really, and these are really stealing their aesthetic, logo, color schemes, fonts to really help them tell the truth, to say what they're really doing. In Portugal, the groups there, said, let's talk about neocolonialism and CO2 colonialism. Under Galp, specifically calling out its relationship for gas expansion in Mozambique. Looking at, again, at this global supply chain, north-south, how are our stories connected to other stories? And then I want to show the video because it was kind of fun. That was the wrap-up of this. And I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to start again with a different screen. And okay, let's see. So cancel, oops, okay. So here we go. I'm gonna make it big. We're gonna watch it. It's 1 minute and 50 seconds long. So hang in there, should be fun. Cool. Okay. So I think that's, we can leave it there for now. But really exciting to be thinking about how we can be looking at the stories the fossil fuel industry is telling and directly confronting, going after those stories, and what better way to use that, to do that than, going after the advertisement spaces where people are sort of expecting and used to receive this kind of communication, and maybe helping the industry to tell a little bit more of the truth. So thank you so much. And Carl, we'll pass back to you.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I love the video at the end. And hopefully also the hashtag BanFossilAds call to action and the space it's creating is going to be an opportunity for us to share more strategies and more frames that we can realign that fossil fuel industry message. So thank you for that presentation and those brilliant examples. Moving on, not only does the fossil fuel industry take over our public spaces, they also take over the institutions that we hold dear. Our museums, our sports teams, anything can be used as a vessel for them to try to create legitimacy by pouring their dirty money into them. But we can be able to fight back, and a lot of groups have fought back very successfully. And to that end, I'm very happy to introduce Teresa from Fossil Fuel Culture that's going to share with us their experience and their very successful fight against this type of dirty sponsorships. So over to you, Teresa.
Thank you, Carl, for the invitation. And I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be here in this space with Kevin again. I always bump into unexpected spaces, mostly online, unfortunately, lately. We have to make sure we do it physically too. Well, I'm going to share my screen also. Well, first, a little introduction. My name is Teresa. I co-founded Fossil Free Culture in the Netherlands a while ago, 2016, with a group of artists and activists. And since then, we've been campaigning to get rid of fossil fuel sponsorships in cultural institutions in the Netherlands. And wait a second, where is it? Yeah. Well, our collective focuses on something very specific that we call art washing, which is like greenwashing. You probably all are now familiar with that, but fossil fuel companies washing their images through the association with arts. And we see that a lot in cultural institutions, in museums especially, where companies like Shell sponsor museums to wash and clean up their image. So we've been doing that. Yeah, I want to start actually with a video because Carl asked me a little bit to talk about how we use the actions in the strategy. So what we've done so far is we've focused on one institution and worked there until they ended the sponsorship with Shell. Shell is the biggest company in the Netherlands, so we target Shell. And we started in the Van Gogh Museum. We did 6 performances there, unannounced, unsolicited, and until they cut the sponsorship in 2019, if I'm correct. And this is the last action that we did that there. And I wanted to show you this one because it's, for me, the one that carries all the work that we've been doing. It shows how we've been growing as a movement and how we've been escalating in our tactics, and also show how we incorporate the unexpected, because we go inside this public institution without announcing it, and how the reaction of the institution, and in this case specifically the reaction of the security, also takes part in the performance. So I will show you a fragment of this performance. well, this image was probably, it lasted for a couple of seconds that we completed this huge banner. And then it was completely, you saw this in the video, it was completely torn down by the security in a like huge drama fight. And so we were actually very lucky that we could capture this moment. We made this banner with 42 pieces of paper, and we only had one copy for each. So they kept on like pulling the banners down and rip them off, and we carried them up again until we could complete the whole installation, the whole banner. And yeah, so and after this action, a month after, the museum announced that they had cut the sponsorship with Shell. So we are very convinced that this action was very effective, and because we really they couldn't actually handle this, and you could see that in the video. They couldn't cope with us anymore, and we kept on, because we were also repeatedly going into the museum, like causing a lot of disruption. And so that's very key. Choose one target and keep causing so much disruption that they cannot like handle you anymore, and they decide, okay, are we gonna keep on coping with these people, or we cut the sponsorship? And then the most sensible thing to do is to cancel sponsorship. Yeah, this is a tactic that we I normally don't speak about very much, because it's like it supports the performances. And what we do is we hijack all the leaflets that the museums that we target produce. And this, in this case, is a leaflet of a temporary exhibition at the Van Gogh Museum. And when we did the performance, we distributed this leaflet to the public present at that moment. And so we copy exactly the same style, colors, fonts of the leaflets that the museum makes, and we paste it with our story and our images. And so it looks like this. It looks exactly the same. You don't see a difference of the Van Gogh Museum leaflets and our leaflets, but when you open them, you see that the content is the story of our performances. So we've been doing this with every performance. These leaflets accompany every performance that we have done. Another important element of our tactic is that we always use the body as the main tool. This is the first performance that we did at the concert hall, and it was called Writing on the Wall. So with three persons were literally printed on the glass facade of the Concertgebouw, the concert hall. So we left the prints of oil. They were drenched in oil, in molasses, and we did a triptych. A triptych is a classic. People that are familiar with art painting, they know it's a triptych of bodies pasted on the glass. And another tactic or part of the strategy that we've been using so far, we've done that in the Van Gogh Museum and here again in the concert hall, is to organize what we call action storms. And that's a series of 3 or more performances or actions that happen in a very short duration of time, like one after the other. So we go inside and performance, and a week later, more or less, we come again and do it again, and a week later again. And so the institution gets so annoyed by us that they reconsider their sponsorships. And this was the first of one of these action storms at the Concertgebouw, in which we hijacked their gala, the opening of the concert season. And we went in as waiters serving black champagne. And the public actually thought that we were part of the party, so they took the champagne and drank it. It was luckily edible champagne with, or like not even champagne, it was like bubbles with edible color stuff. And then a week after, we came in and rolled banners behind the concert when the concert had ended that were carrying poems written by a Dutch poet, a female poet, about the apocalypse. And so at the end of the concert, we unfurled these huge banners, and the orchestra decided to play an encore, so we could make this beautiful image. And then a week after, we came in again and did a storm of papers that we threw from the balconies. These were music scores. All the papers had, you can see it maybe, music score printed on them of a piece that was impossible to be played. And with this performance or action, we were talking about the impossibility for music to be played on a planet that was destroyed by fossil fuels. And after this performance, a few months after, the sponsorship between Shell and the concert hall ended, and we celebrated that outside in the museum square. And all the museums, so that was the moment that all the museums and that square were all liberated from the fossil fuel industry. And we did campaigns at the Van Gogh Museum and at the concert hall, and before us, the Rijksmuseum, the most important museum, or the biggest, not necessarily most important, but the biggest museum in the Netherlands, had ended their sponsorship by Aramco. So the whole museum square is now free, a fossil-free museum plan. And then we moved towards a science museum. And at that moment was the last cultural institution in Amsterdam accepting money from Shell. And this was last year during the pandemic, so we couldn't go inside, and we had to adapt and find other tactics to continue our work outside when the museum was closed, actually, because of lockdown. And this was the first action that we did during that campaign. And we did a commemoration of the 25 years of the murder of the Ogoni 9, the 9 activists that were killed by the government of Nigeria due to their resistance against Shell in Nigeria. And one of these 9 activists was Ken Saro-Wiwa, who was also a poet, was a leader of the Mosoni resistance, and was also a poet. And we projected his poems on the front of Nemo, the museum, and held 9 torches to commemorate their resistance and to bring a message that we are carrying their fire, their resistance persists. And then all of a sudden the museum also decided to stop the sponsorship. They ended the contract with Shell. We had done only one performance there. And they say, of course, that the contract was supposed to end. And well, in this case, we're not sure. But to remember actually that receiving a sponsorship by a fossil fuel industry also has a responsibility. So they have to be also accountable for in this case, the Science Museum Nemo had worked with Shell for 90 years on and off, but they have a history of 90 years of facilitating a clean public image for this horrific company. And so we did an intervention to celebrate actually the end of the sponsorship, but also to remember all the damage that has been caused due to this sponsorship, and also to change the narrative, because normally when we've been hearing a lot when we present our work that these companies, well, what they are doing is innocent, and that this money is better to invest this money in culture than to invest it somewhere else. So why not to accept money by a company, and that at least they are contributing for culture, but they don't see actually that the relation between accepting money from a company like this and what they are actually doing, like facilitating their positive public image, helps them to continue their business as usual. And what we did was we replaced, this is a windmill that it's always running in front of the museum, and it talks about the butterfly effect. And the butterfly effect is that a small, like flying of a butterfly in one place can have gigantic and like uncontrollable consequences elsewhere. And we talked about this phenomenon and we called it the shell effect. And so we replaced all the plates that were on the benches of the watermill, the plates that were describing the butterfly effect as a phenomenon, and we replaced it by the shell effect and described all the damage that shell has caused in places that we don't see because they are invisibilized. And so it was 4 pieces, and we colored the water black, and we closed this chapter. This is just a few quotes of the plates. We remember that in the 80 shell prospected for oil in the southwest Amazon along the Urubamba River in Peru, where I come from, home to the Nahua peoples. Around half of the Nahua population were killed by exposure to disease. We remember that from the 60s to the 80s, violating United Nations sanctions, Shell collaborated with Rhodesia and South Africa's apartheid regimes, supplying them with huge amounts of oil. We remember that in Nigeria, Ken Saro-Wiwa and the Ogoni 9 were murdered in 1995 for standing against the government's collaboration with Shell. In Saro-Wiwa's own words, Shell and the Nigerian military dictatorships are violent institutions, and both depend heavily on violence to control those areas of Nigeria in which oil is found. So this is very important now in our work. Maybe you can see the development of our performances. We are centering justice more and more, and trying to connect the dots of how the sponsorship in one place creates the destruction of livelihoods and ecosystems in places that we can't see because they're invisibilized. They're made invisible intentionally by these corporations and their associations with their governments. So I'm going to stop here, and probably I forgot some things, but yeah. Now we are, all Amsterdam is free from fossil fuel sponsorship, and we're moving to the north, and we're going to target gas. In Groningen, there are 2 museums that are accepting money by subsidiaries from Shell, Shell but with different names, NAM and Gas Uni, Gasterra, other companies that exploit gas in the north, and they sponsor museums. So, but we were developing this campaign now.
Wonderful to hear, Teresa. I can't wait to see what new creative ways you come up with to hold these climate and human rights criminals to account. Really appreciate your work, and can't wait to see more of it in the future. And if you'd like to be inspired by these campaigns, if you want to use these same tactics, if you want to hold these fossil fuel criminals to account and stop them from using our public spaces and our institutions as a greenwashing and performative or space to legitimize themselves, we need to strike back, and we need to take back those spaces like the examples we've seen today. So a huge thank you to Kevin and to Teresa for your work, for the inspiration you shared, and hopefully we'll see our own butterfly or ripple effect of many more of us taking action in the future. If you want to be a part of that, please don't hesitate to go to actiononfossilads.net, learn more about the call to action, and find ways where you and your local groups can join the fight. Hope to see you out there this autumn. Thank you, everyone.